You're listening to Count Richard von Coudenhove Kalergi. Today is Sunday, the 14th of April, and here's a couple of comments since my last video. 2 days late, unfortunately, but here goes. Italy, crosses on graves in a cemetery in a small town of 7,000 inhabitants near Bologna have been covered with black cloth so as not to offend those of another religion, and in a small chapel has installed a motorised blackout curtain following renovations to hide Roman Catholic symbols during ceremonies involving other denominations. Many have criticised this move, with the Forward Italy deputy saying it disrespects Christian values and the memory of our dead by hiding them behind motorised tents. If they are not able to bring respect for the living, at least have respect for the dead and not involve themselves in this foolishness. With another Conservative commentator, FDI leader Giorgia Meloni, who I have to say I've seen some of her speeches on YouTube and it's fantastic, describing this as ideological delirium and using this excuse of respect for others. They lack respect for our Catholic culture and our traditions. The covering of crosses is not the first time Italians have covered up statues and monuments so as not to offend. In 2016, Prime Minister Matteo Renzi had statues at the Capitoline Museum covered entirely so as not to offend visiting Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. Also in Italy, the Cardinal of Florence, Giuseppe Doherty, has announced he will be selling 8,000 square metres of property to a Muslim group to build a mosque, and according to Il Giornale, the land was sold for €7,000, with the Cardinal saying the transformation of Western societies into a multi-ethnic and multi-religious society is a fact and a future that inevitably waits us. Sweden, an ex-Muslim, Monica Walter from Somalia, who came to Sweden in the 1990s, has warned that Swedes will lose Sweden within 50 years. She left Islam and became a Christian and has been a vocal critic of Islam for a number of years. For many years I have tried to get the Swedes to understand that the Muslim goal is to take over your country. Quote. She also believes that most Swedes are too frightened to listen to her message, adding that, quote, Sweden has now approximately 1 million Muslims, many of whom have infiltrated the political parties to promote their own interests, and that the only solution for Sweden is to start mass repatriation of people who think that everything in Sweden is haram or forbidden. If we don't do that, Islam will take over in 50 years, and in 100 years' time the game is over. Last September, a Somali member of the Green Party got elected, even though during her canvassing she never spoke Swedish once. We may all wear watches, but they have the time. A Muslim Instagram poster in Sweden with over 100,000 followers on social media has been sentenced to 18 years in prison for murdering his ex-girlfriend in the bathtub and for other crimes against other former girlfriends as well. The 23-year-old, who was a model, was known for having his body covered in tattoos, murdered her in April last year after he had injected her with tramadol, a strong sedative. She had been tortured, whipped and beaten, and eventually drowned. Other ex-girlfriends came forward and gave evidence of his violent behaviour, including one who said that he humiliated her by pouring liquid over her, filmed it, and posted it on Snapchat. A Swedish-Norwegian Islamophobia expert turned Islamic State jihadist has been arrested by Kurdish forces in Syria near the town of Bagus. Michael Skramos, 33, born in Sweden to Norwegian parents, surrendered along with another 50 people caught hiding in a tunnel that included women and children. The surrender followed the previous capture of his 7 children. Imagine that, 7. In Norway, the average penalty for participating in cooperating with ISIS is 7 years. Skramos had been calling for ISIS supporters to commit attacks on Swedish soil. He converted to Islam and left Sweden in August 2014 with his wife and then 4 children. While in Syria, the Swedish government was still paying his welfare of €725 a month for over 2 years before finally cancelling it. He had been appearing in propaganda videos holding one of his children in one arm and a Kalashnikov in the other, and is regarded as a particular threat to Sweden. ISIS fighter 28-year-old Khalid Shahrudeh is said to have been injured in combat in Syria, receiving a shoulder wound, not only returned to Sweden to receive professional medical treatment, but also returned back to Syria to continue his fight. Utter madness. Germany, a school in Frankfurt has come under fire after its headmaster told a young girl she should wear a hijab if she doesn't want to get bullied. The student mother doesn't want to be bullied. The student's mother told the Bild newspaper that her daughter was verbally attacked and beaten on the way to school by a group of Muslim girls. She explained that she was attacked because she was blonde-haired and had a German Hebrew name. The mother brought this to the attention of the head teacher, who said that she should cover up if she doesn't want to get bullied. The mother removed her daughter from the school. A group of Berlin teachers spoke out about religious bullying, saying that German children were being bullied for something as simple as bringing a ham sandwich to school. In Austria, a regional court in Vienna has convicted an Iraqi Kurd immigrant of murdering his partner, also an Iraqi immigrant and mother of 7. The jury sentenced him to life imprisonment. Back in 2011, the Austrian government had revoked his residency permit due to his criminal convictions, including extortion, in which he was jailed, and in 2016 for drug trafficking, with an additional 9 months for assault while in prison. But despite this, he was never deported. The 40-year-old admitted to stabbing his 50-year-old fiancée, who he was planning to marry later on in the year. He had killed her during an argument over his use of hashish, and that he had felt insulted over comments on the lack of his hair on his chest and about the size of his personal equipment, and that she had cheated with him. He believed she cheated with him with 3 other men. After details of the gruesome murder surfaced publicly, many questions were raised in Austria about asylum system, which cost the state 1.8 billion during 2018. France, 2 men who recently claimed asylum in France, stating that they were both unaccompanied minors, have, after fingerprint testing, revealed that neither were not even close to being minors that they were alleged to be. One of the men from Mali turned out to be 23, while the other, with a birth cert from Guinea, turned out to be 47. Catalonia in Spain has the fastest growing Muslim population in Spain and more Islamic centres than any other region in Spain. From 2011 to 2015, the number of Muslims in Catalonia had grown by 19.5%, or more than 83,000 in 4 years. Since 2011, the number of immigrants has doubled and make up over 1 million of Barcelona's 7 million population. Barcelona has now joined a long list of cities that have populations reaching more than 30% non-European. France is ready to take in 20 economic migrants from the German NGO-funded vessel Alan Kurdi, adrift in the Mediterranean since April the 3rd. More than 250 international NGOs, I'm sure some of them are Irish, wrote an open letter to Angela Merkel seeking her support on changing the EU's refugee policy regulations. And now for some domestic issues. A man who regularly abused his stepdaughter in the family home while her mother was working has been jailed for 12 years. The foreign national, aged 42, admitted to the offences but initially thought it was acceptable under Irish law. He was convicted by a jury but did not accept the verdict. In her victim impact statement, the girl said that the family were now experiencing financial implications of having not him being in the house, and that sometimes she felt that these were her fault. He pleaded not guilty to the charges that included oral rape, 12 counts of rape and 3 counts of defilement when the girl was aged between 11 and 15 years of age. The judge noted that the man was an Irish citizen, paper Irish, of foreign birth with very little English, and that prison would be more difficult. The sexual abuse continued until eventually the girl told a family member who contacted the guards, and in a phone call that was heard on loudspeaker by other family members, the accused was heard offering the girl €200 for sex. The decision of a judge to allow a Pakistani taxi driver charged with and admitting to 3 counts of sexual assault to drive, provided that no female passenger does not sit in the front seat is not the first time that a judge has made an extraordinary decision. In Galway last year, a Pakistani father of two who had his licence revoked for a second offence of sexual assault in which he touched the breast and put his hand up the skirt of a sleeping female passenger. He had been allowed to drive during daylight hours only while the book of evidence was being compiled. He was unsuccessful in his appeal. The judge also imposed court restrictions preventing his name from being published. Gemma Doherty had her usual supply of negative commentators during the week, but still managed to host two events in West Cork, one of which had to be in the car park of a local church, which had early given permission for the use of a parish hall to be used, but following repeated complaints from a certain resident in West Cork and her band of followers, who probably lived nowhere near her, permission was eventually refused. Interestingly, that they would take the side of someone who is pro-abortion over someone who isn't. Gemma is also running in the European elections, which I hope will give her the opportunity to increase her support. And I would like to finish on this about one man's act of personal protest against the establishment. In 1968, Flight Lieutenant Alan Pollock, while flying over London in a Hawker Hunter fighter, decided, in the wake of Labour government's decision under Harold Wilson not to hold a flypast over London on the 50th anniversary of the founding of the RAF, decided to put on his own air display. Having faked radio trouble, he flew his aircraft up the Thames at rooftop height, travelling at over 300 miles an hour at 150 feet. And when he came to the Houses of Parliament, he flied full power and circled the top of Parliament buildings 3 times before continuing on up the Thames, and suddenly realised that straight in front of him was the Tower Bridge. And when he saw that a double-decker bus was crossing the bridge, he knew he had enough room. So he proceeded to fly through the gap in Tower Bridge at over 400 miles an hour. That's what I call a personal protest. When he got to base, he was arrested, and rather than being court-martialed, which would have meant publicity on the case and give him a chance to explain why he did those actions, he was given a medical discharge instead, and now lives quietly at the age of 82 in England. Well, there are a couple of thoughts this week which are my own. Thanks for listening. Good night and good luck.